I decided to do this video because of information that I learned about why there's so much obesity. Now, I might be referring to China and India, and it would also include the Philippines. Why there's so much obesity in the world. In fact, the largest part of the population of the whole world has actually become obese. We're going to talk particularly about rice. I'm living in the Philippines. It's a Philippines channel, so this is probably a subject matter I should have covered a long time ago, but I even had a friend that asked me, well, do you find a lot of Filipinos to be skinny? And I said, no. Actually, the question was, is there a lot of fat Filipinos? I said, well, there's more so now. Now, hundreds of years ago, really not going really that far back, really, you never really seen a lot of overweight Filipinos or Chinese or people from India. Now, what happened was when people started moving to urban areas, they became less active. A lot of Chinese, for example, were working in the fields all the time. They only had a chance to maybe eat one, maybe two meals a day. And it was okay to eat rice under those conditions. We're talking basically about insulin. And it was okay to eat white rice. Now, rice is life, actually. But that doesn't apply anymore. Rice is not life anymore. It fills your stomach, but when they first started polishing rice, they did that because when they had to transport rice over long distances on boat, whatever, rice could spoil. And by polishing the rice, it actually helped preserve the rice. But what it also did was it took all the nutrients out of rice, B1, and people used to get something called beriberi. They said that was a very rare disease, but nobody understood what beriberi was. It was when you were lacking of B1, a very important vitamin, but other foods have taken care of that problem. So beriberi is something that you're not going to hear as often, but they call it beriberi. When they started polishing the rice, all the nutrients were taken out of the rice. And white rice today is usually void of any vitamins and fiber that you need in your body. And polishing rice has become pretty common. You could eat brown rice, which is more healthier than white rice because it has a lot of the vitamins. It's only a few steps level above white rice. White rice is basically like eating your sugar. It is a comparative to pure sugar because of the amount of carbohydrates in there. And we all tend to eat a high carbohydrate diet, unless you want to go on this thing called the keto diet, which is going to be void of carbohydrates. And the population all over America, with the introduction of fast foods and people are not eating properly, and people who have moved into urban environments are not exactly eating the way they did years ago. They're eating more food, but they're still putting the carbohydrates in their diet, and that's what's causing what we know as diabetes. And because of the polishing of the rice, taking out of the white rice all the nutrients, that's where the problem lies. It becomes basically like a pure sugar. Now, I have tried in my own way to my own partner to say, just kind of stop eating rice. And you can't explain to a Filipino. It's very difficult, when you're talking about someone that grew up with generations of eating white rice, and it has to do with budget, and basically white rice would fill your stomach. You couldn't afford anything else. Now, because most people are eating better diets these days, they're eating more, the use of white rice is not necessary anymore. It was used as a staple food. It still is throughout the world. And rice by itself, if you were not working in the fields, if you were not working in the fields, if you were not eating other foods besides rice, rice could be okay for you because it provides carbohydrates, which will turn into energy, and it got people by for a long time. But if you notice that people who tend to eat a lot of, say, potatoes and these kind of starches and rice, which is loaded with starch, and if you know how that kind of configures down to eating rice turning into, the carbs turning into the starches and sugars and then calories and then weight. that is why you're seeing a lot of Filipinos, shall I say, Chinese, and even from India. Now in India, population has become more obese. Okay, they have the continued use of white rice, but that would be okay in itself. It would not cause any health problems or anything leading to diabetes if they were active all the time, as they were in the fields. And those who still work in the fields, who only eat maybe 1 to 2 meals a day, can get away with eating white rice. But those that have become more, shall I say, stagnant, and that's not the word I'm looking for here, more sedentary, they're not working out in the fields, they're not working every day, and they're eating more than 1 or 2 meals a day, are the ones that are getting obese. Moving into urban environments has caused this problem, and people are less active, there's more food available. Junk food has really killed the world, basically. So white rice has been a staple for most countries, really. And by itself, it was okay. It was okay to eat white rice. And before, especially, it was polished. It was a good thing to eat white rice. However, because of the industrialization of our societies and big cities and the amount of food that's available to people are overeating more than 1 meal a day, eating 2, 3, even more meals a day. Then they supplement their meals with rice, as with every meal. As you know, here in the Philippines, breakfast, lunch, and dinner consist of white rice. So why is that wrong? Well, think back what I'm saying here, okay? They're not eating just 1 meal a day, they're eating 3 meals a day, and it's usually other meals. There's meats involved, and there's other vegetables, and there's other foods. And unfortunately, in a diet, there's fast foods, which is the worst foods in the world, obvious reasons, and caloric, cholesterol, fats, and of course all the sugars that we eat. And a lot of people like to drink things like Coca-Cola, which is like pure high fructose corn syrup, is the worst thing that's ever happened to our society. So the combination of these other foods with white rice has made our nation and made the world obese. And obesity is at an alarming level throughout the world. I find myself eating rice here and there because it's served, and it might go good with, like if I have puchero, if I have some other meal, I want to supplement it with rice. Rice is always on the table here. Now, despite how much I could counsel anybody, her or her children, the first thing they look for is white rice. And if you know anything about the Philippines, you moved here, you lived here, you're living here, maybe you visited here, you're going to understand that white rice is part of the diet. It's on the table from breakfast to dinner. And it's something I don't think anybody's going to change, because people are not educated about their diet and nutrition. Besides other bad habits they have, alcohol, cigarettes, this, that, foods that are basically laced with it's not carbohydrates, but they're actually laced with preservatives and food colorings and everything you can think of in there, has not made a lot of our food. Now with the industrialization, now you got stores that have canned foods, boxed foods, and everything has preservatives in it. They're loaded with sugar, they're loaded with salt. And this is what's killing our nation. It's killing all of us, really. Now, being sedentary and then eating rice is not a good combination. As I said, the Chinese, I use them as an example. For centuries, they're out in the field, they're growing their food for a living, and they're out in the fields all day. They don't have time to eat, really, and they eat at most 1 or 2 meals a day, but their meals always consisted of rice, and it was okay to eat the rice because, you were not sedentary, and you were not, you weren't going to get diseases like beriberi at the time, because the rices were not polished at the time. Polished is really like in reference to preserving the rice, and it would be, unfortunately, in the process of doing so, it became a practice to preserve rice that they would polish it. And what that would do actually is to take all the nutrients out of the rice. So basically, polishing the rice is basically rendering the rice to be totally no nutritional value whatsoever. And to think that a lot of the world is depending on rice as a staple food, India, Philippines, China, and so forth and so on. In India, you hardly ever seen any obese people, and it's only going back 20 to 40 years. It has increased 100-fold obesity in a relatively short period of time, but a number of nations. It's because of the fact that people are eating more, they're getting too many calories, they're getting too much sugar, too much starch, and they're also more sedentary than ever, especially those that have moved from the countryside into urban areas where nowadays especially there's all kinds of junk food, McDonald's, all this crap that's out there right now, highly caloric, saturated fats, high in salt, foods that are high in sugar. So if you add rice to all this, you're farting with your glycemic index. You're really exploding it. Remember, starches, which is prevalent in potatoes and certainly in rice, since we're talking about rice, it's a starchy food, and eating a lot of that, the starch, turns the carbohydrates to starch, and then it turns into sugar, turns into calories, turns into more weight. And that's why you're actually seeing more people that are obese than ever before. And we're becoming an obese world, an unhealthy world. But children of these nations, especially the Asian nations, are not taught about nutrition. And I could speak here for, say, the Philippines. You don't find this kind of education in the schools. Now, when you refer to the word poverty, it does not necessarily mean that you don't have any money. Poverty is really a word that's used to how much you eat. If you are impoverished, it means that you did not eat a lot of food. Okay, a lot of people were starving, and they die of starvation, but there came rice, and rice was always the answer to help with starvation because it was plentiful and it was cheap. But unfortunately, as time went by and they started messing with the rice and polishing it and everything else, it did not become nutritious anymore. It was never considered a whole food, okay? It was not a whole food ever before, and it really isn't now, more so. But rice at least had nutrients in it, B vitamins like B1, which was really important to have. And rice filled the bellies of billions of people through the years. It's a staple food that basically filled the tummies of people across the world. And it had some nutritional value at one point, but when it came to a point when they did preserve the rice and polish it, all the nutrients were taken out, and that's why it became unhealthy. I myself do eat my share of rice, but not a lot. But I notice around here, for when they get up in the morning, they got a pot of rice going there. And this is morning, this is lunch, and this is also for dinner. Rice is part of the menu, and it's white rice. Although around here, I do try to buy some jasmine now and then, which is a better quality rice. Most people don't eat brown rice. You can eat brown rice, and it does contain all the nutrients, but it's still not that far too dissimilar, to white rice in the fact that there still is a lot of starch and carbohydrates, but not as much as white rice, but at least it has nutritional value to it. And a lot of Filipinos, a lot of Chinese, Indians, a lot of them don't eat brown rice. First of all, it takes longer to cook, and it's a little more expensive to buy. That's another reason why they don't eat brown rice. But I think to a lot of Filipinos, brown rice, they would look at it as being dirty rice. They don't like the color. They have to have white rice, although they've heard that brown rice and red rice and things like that are much more nutritionally more in value to them. But following their own tradition and the pocketbook of most people, that they can't afford to buy the more expensive rices, the ones that have not been kind of messed with, okay, and polished and all that. So that's kind of a story on rice here and why we have an obese nation and why it continues to be obese, because when fast foods came in, it really helped destroy the world. It did. And businesses like McDonald's and places like that have not helped our society at all. We've become a nation where it's easy to go into a fast food place, and yes, it's tasty food. It's absolutely tasty food, but in reality, it's not healthy. Now, diabetes is so prevalent all throughout the world now. And once you become diabetic, it really messes with your whole metabolic system, and you get other diseases from that and other conditions from that. We don't have a healthy society anymore, although medicine has gotten really well for us, and it has preserved human life and continues to help preserve human life with good medicine and treatment for any illness. But everything really has to do with that old saying, you are what you eat. And I've talked about things like that on my show before. Now, for example, I don't have the perfect diet at all, but I try to incorporate good things into my diet. Not just supplementation, but I eat a lot of broccoli, whatever I can get a hold of, blueberries, broccoli, strawberries. I love spinach. If you try to incorporate it into your diet, instead of eating a greasy breakfast of eggs and potatoes and sausage, eating more of a whole grain cereal would be more of a better idea. Eating oatmeal is really healthy for you. Whole grain cereals with like muesli. I eat a lot of muesli. I like muesli better than I like actually oatmeal. It's more tasty and a lot more nutrients in it. And I usually add fruit to it, whatever's available. If it's just strawberries, I put strawberries in. If I got blueberries, I always try to incorporate blueberries into my diet. Now, it's okay to eat. You could eat several eggs a day. And it's, and people worry about the cholesterol. Cholesterol really is not as big of an issue as most people think it is, because your body utilizes this cholesterol. You could actually eat several eggs a day, every single day. But if you combine the eggs with things like bacon, in an American diet, you'll see that all the time. Truckers go here to restaurants. They have, not just truckers, but, a lot of American families, their breakfast could consist of toast, okay, which is high carbohydrates, boom, 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 right away, right there, and then it consists of eggs, which to a certain point is okay, but then they put other things in it, everything fried, potatoes, fried potatoes and like hash browns, and there'll be greasy sausages, and on top of that there'll be bacon, which is the worst, and we all love bacon, whether you're a pork lover or not. Everybody loves bacon. I love bacon, but it's rare. I have some bacon, not a lot of it, sitting in my freezer. It's been there for a long time. So I don't have the most perfect diet in the world. I'll be the first to say that. But I would think that my diet is better than the average person, and I also use supplementation. And basically, all this really is, and I talk about these health issues all the time, it's really just an insurance policy. There's no guarantee in life that you're going to live. It has to do with genetics. It has to do with a lot of things, but it does have a lot to do with your diet, whether you have a certain amount of exercise. As you get older, you need more protein, so you will become frail. Now, one thing I'm not is frail, and people joke around about that, but one thing I'm not is frail. I'm like 174 pounds at 5'7". That's hardly frail. I'm supposed to actually lose weight. I actually have 2 inches on my belly, which I need to get rid of. I find it very hard because when you become as you get older, you become more sedentary for a lot of reasons. Maybe you physically can't do certain exercises they used to be able to do a long time ago. Maybe you're not as active as you were, because it could be a lot of things. And people make excuses. It's the weather outside, it's too hot, or maybe it's raining or something, and so you have a lot of excuses. You sit around, you get older, you watch a lot of TV and movies, so what you do. Face the fact, you're in the internet all day. And that is all adding to obesity and heart health and so forth. So then again, a lot of Americans who maybe didn't eat a lot of rice, they moved to the Philippines. They find that, well, if they're with a Filipina, they're going to be eating a lot of white rice in their diet. It becomes part of your diet. So now you're becoming unhealthy in that sense. Although you might stick to your own values and your own culture, the different kind of foods you would eat that were maybe healthy, and you continue to do that, which is still good. But when you got introduced to eating, white rice as part of your meal all the time, because, your wife, your sour, your girlfriend is always serving up that, you're going to notice all the children. And I talk to people sometimes about this out here, but it goes into one ear through the other. You're not going to change your culture, okay? And people only have so much money for food, and rice has been the staple diet of of Asians throughout the world. And India is considered Asia, so keep that in mind. The Indian people have always been thin. But now you're seeing a lot more obese Indian people as they urbanize themselves. They become part of McDonald's, they become part of more of a sedentary lifestyle, and they're not all working in the fields anymore. They let somebody else do it, and their food comes to the store. They're not out in the fields, they're not working all day, a lot of them. So when you become more sedentary, then it becomes even more vitally important to avoid the carbohydrates such as rice and potatoes and so forth. But here in the Philippines, and I can certainly speak of that in my own family out here, rice is on the table every single day, and I don't eat it all the time. If there's not much on my plate, I said, I got to put an additive to this, I like mixing meat with rice and vegetables. It's very tasty. A little bit is fine, but when you eat a lot of rice, and then you're also eating highly caloric or saturated fats, everything becomes unhealthy in a meal. So what is the answer? Whole foods. Whole foods is the answer. How many people eat whole foods? Not really a lot. They don't, because everything now is manufactured. It's in stores. It's canned, it's boxed, it's frozen with preservatives in it. High salt, high sugar content, high preservatives, MSMs, and everything you could think of. We're not living in a very healthy society, and it takes a very special person, a special willpower, to be in charge of your own body and say, no, I'm not going to eat this. I'm going to eat healthier than this, and I'm going to live a healthier lifestyle. Quit the smoking if you can. I could learn from that, right? So can some of you. Quit drinking if you drink. Alcohol, oh, geez. Sugar, and I won't even get into that. Alcohol is one of the worst things, other than cigarettes, you can put in your body. Probably worse. It has a quicker effect on your metabolic system on there. Almost everybody drinks. I must be one of the odd characters because I don't drink alcohol. I don't touch alcohol. I don't drink wine, which could be healthy for you in moderation. Red wine, that is. Or just take resveratrol as a supplement, and that could, each tablet could be like 1,000 glasses of wine as far as the nutrients you find in wine or the polyphenols and so forth. But not everybody can afford to buy vitamins. Not everybody could afford to buy good whole foods, healthy foods that have not been treated with chemicals. It's hard for you to want to pay that extra money 3 times more than if you want to pay money for organic foods. You're going to pay like 3 times more. So a lot of people are not willing to do that. Hey, I'm just going to settle for non-organic foods instead of good whole foods. Even I can't do that all the time. I can't buy, everything I buy is going to have a label of, organic on it. I really don't, Maybe the only things I ever bought that's organic is probably the lentils that I eat. I try to buy the organic ones. But anyway, I hope this has been educational for you. Quite a change to some of the shows I've been doing on here lately. And I'm not going to be doing as much shows anymore because I want to come out with things I think are really pertinent to talk about as it pertains to my life in the Philippines and what I've learned here in the Philippines, not just on relationships, and that's all part of the whole genre of talking about the Philippines is relationships and so forth. And of course, one of the popular topics which has been rehashed over and over again is the cost of living, which is ever changing all the time out here. So with that being said, I'm going to end this broadcast here, this upload, and hope you learned something about it. You just got to avoid the carbohydrates if possible. They're saying that you could eat rice maybe 3 times a year, it would be okay, but eating it every single day as part of your meal. Maybe you're forced to eat it because you're asawa, makes it every single day, and it's part of the diet. It's there in front of you. Okay, let me have a bowl of rice with this, mix it with my vegetables, mix it with meats, to supplement my diet because, maybe there wasn't too much on the table. They had some chicken, but, chicken alone, you got to have some rice with it or something, or potatoes or whatever, because chicken alone is just not enough, right? Maybe you make some soups and you add some rice to the soup. That always helps, You have a broth, you want to add some rice to a chicken broth or whatever. Okay, I've done that myself, I used to create my own dishes with broth. I'd add rice to it or whatever to put more stock into the soups. But unfortunately, we're all living in a very unhealthy society as far as foods. The smallest of the population is even considering eating healthier whole foods anymore. Everything is convenient food. And I get stuck in that too. When I make trips to Cebu and stuff, I'm on the road, or I'm in anywhere, nothing's open in the morning. If there's a fast food place, so you have to eat something. There's no restaurants open early in the morning, or you're on a road trip or something, and you say, well, I just can't think of a restaurant I can go to that's serving any healthy food, but I just got to eat something. So you go to McDonald's, and you wind up getting a hamburger or a chicken burger or something in there. And if you're a Filipino, of course, there's going to be rice on the menu and all that. So you can only do your best to educate your family about this, but you're not going to take thousands of years of tradition out of the Filipinos, the Chinese, or anybody else for that fact in Asia, when it's become so part of the, shall I call it the grain, okay, ironically call it the grain of their society, is to eat these grains. But unfortunately, they're not whole grains anymore. Unfortunately, they've been bleached out and polished, and all the nutrients are out of there. You're basically eating empty calories. I could sum it up by saying that you're eating empty calories by eating rice with no nutritional value practically whatsoever. Okay, I hope I've kind of educated a few people out there. This kind of shows that I really want to do on here, that I feel are worth doing on here. If we're going to talk about the Philippines, let's approach it. Let's attack it in different aspects of the culture, not just how to get a date in the Philippines and what's going to attract a woman, and are they with men just for money, and the cost of living. We could elaborate on some of that. You could polish it up a little bit. You know what I mean? Take the nutrients out of what you're talking about and have a very bland, rehashed conversation or dialogue with your viewers about women and cost of living, and just rehashed and rehashed and rehashed. Okay, so hope that's been helpful to you. This is one of my better shows that I really wanted to talk about. So we're going to try to do weekly shows once a week. Once a week, we're going to do that. And I think this is the best time to do it. What is today? I don't know. Is it Sunday? I don't even know the day of the week anymore, really. That's what happens when you live out here and you're retired. So we're going to do a show once a week, unless some kind of grand headline has to come up about something that I really have to talk about. Then you'll hear me in between that time. But I hope you appreciate my show. Hope you subscribe. Hope you look forward to my next show. And be proactive with the show. I will come on if there's really something really to talk about that I feel need. It doesn't have to be once a week. That's my ideal goal at this time. But if I do come on at some point, it's because I had something that I thought was important to share with you or to talk about. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on my next show.